Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to hack into the science behind what really drives you. We're not just talking about motivation in some abstract way, we're diving into the actual chemical that sparks it. And, just as importantly, what happens when it's gone. Okay, let's start with a feeling we all know, right? That incredibly frustrating moment when you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, whether it's finishing a project, going to the gym, whatever, but you just cannot find the energy to start. And here's the thing, that struggle, it's not about being lazy, it's not a character flaw, it's not a lack of willpower. It's actually a powerful chemical process happening inside your brain, and it's all run by one very specific molecule. So, let's meet the star of the show. It's a neuromodulator, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a chemical that influences how your brain cells communicate, and its name is dopamine. Now, this is a really big one. We've all heard dopamine called the pleasure chemical, right? Well, turns out that's not really the full story. Dopamine isn't about the pleasure you feel when you get the reward. It's released in anticipation of the reward. It's the chemical of pursuit. It's the molecule of more. Okay, so to really get a handle on this, you've got to understand how dopamine works. And the best way to think about it is like a seesaw, or maybe a wave pool. Your motivation is never just a flat line. It's always moving up and down in this rhythm of peaks and troughs. So picture your normal, everyday level of motivation. That's the seesaw sitting perfectly flat. Now, anything that gives you a little jolt of dopamine, that's a peak. That's one side of the seesaw going up. But here's the catch, and this is crucial. For every peak, there is always an equal and opposite trough. The seesaw has to come down on the other side, dipping below where you started. So how does this actually get you off the couch? Well, it's pretty clever, actually. Just thinking about something you want, like a great cup of coffee, gives you a tiny little dopamine bump. But the real magic happens right after. Your dopamine level immediately drops below where you started. And that little bit of pain, that feeling of craving, that's what creates the powerful urge to get up and go get the coffee. And this is where we can get into a lot of trouble. Because if you don't understand this whole seesaw thing, it's super easy to fall into these common traps. We start chasing bigger and bigger peaks, and in the process, we accidentally drain our long-term motivation for all the normal stuff in life. I mean, just look at the scale of these spikes. Eating something you love when you're hungry doubles your baseline dopamine. Okay, nicotine, about 2.5 times. But then you look at something like cocaine, and we're talking a 10-fold increase. And here's the ironclad rule. The higher and faster the peak, the deeper and longer the painful crash that comes after. It makes it almost impossible to get motivated for normal, everyday goals. Let me tell you a quick story that shows this perfectly. It's a classic experiment involving a bunch of little kids who, on their own, absolutely loved to draw. It was their favorite thing to do. So the researchers come in and they start giving the kids these shiny gold stars for their drawings, an external reward for something they already loved doing for its own sake. And of course, the kids were ecstatic. Who wouldn't be? They were layering this new reward right on top of their existing joy. But, and you can probably guess where this is going, when the researchers stopped giving out the gold stars, something fascinating happened. The kids just stopped drawing. The one thing they used to love doing for fun, they now wouldn't even touch in their free time. So what on earth happened there? Well, by stacking that external reward on top of their natural joy, they created this huge artificial dopamine peak. And when that peak was taken away, the trough that followed was so deep that it completely wiped out their original internal drive. They had literally hacked their own joy away. Okay, so that sounds kind of bleak, right? But the good news is we are not at the mercy of this system. We can absolutely use this knowledge to our advantage and build a toolkit for taking back control of that seesaw. First things first, you can raise your entire baseline. Think of it like raising the water level in that wave pool so the troughs don't feel so low. And these aren't crazy life hacks, they're the fundamentals. We're talking about getting quality sleep, making sure you get some sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning, regular exercise. These things set you up with way more motivational fuel to burn all day long. Okay, that's great for the long haul, but what about right now? You know, that moment when you're stuck in the pit, just staring at your to-do list, feeling zero motivation. You're deep in a procrastination trough. What do you do then? All right, get ready for this, because the answer is completely counterintuitive. The best way to get out of that motivational trough is to make it even deeper on purpose. It sounds nuts, I know, but it turns out the speed at which your dopamine resets is directly tied to how steep that trough is. So by doing something short, safe, but really effortful, like a 60-second cold shower, or forcing yourself to meditate when you'd rather do anything else, you are artificially forcing that trough to get steeper. And what happens? Your brain has to rebound faster and higher, slingshotting you back into a state of focus and drive. And this all leads to what is basically the holy grail of motivation. When you learn to lean into effort, to use that friction as your friend instead of running from it, you can literally rewire your brain. You start to associate the hard work itself with the amazing feeling that follows. The effort becomes the reward. And that's how you build a truly unstoppable internal engine for drive. So the only question left is, what friction are you going to lean into today?